So the study that I'm presenting is called Women with Polycystic Ovary Syndrome Have Poor Workability and Higher Disability Rate at Midlife, a Northern Finland C6 study. So what is PCOS? I feel like a lot of people don't know what it is, even though it does affect like 10% of women. So it's a hormonal condition that has a variety of complications with it as well. It has problems with ovulation and regular periods, which lead to cysts on the ovaries, which is where the polycystic name comes from. There's also other side effects like hirsutism, which is excessive hair growth, typically where women don't grow hair, fertility issues, weight gain and insulin resistance, and mental health problems like depression and anxiety. So it's more than a reproductive health issue. It includes a wide range of comorbidities, which include metabolic, psychological, and musculoskeletal disorders. There's not too much research done on PCOS. Until 2022, it wasn't even a line item in the NIH for funding. And this study is from 2022, even though it uses data from 1966. Okay, so study purpose. Since the disorders that could result from PCOS are risk factors for early retirement and poor workability, this research connects occupational health with PCOS. So the study purpose is PCOS presents with multiple comorbidities potentially affecting function. This was the first general population-based study to evaluate workability, participation in working life, and disability retirement in middle-aged women with and without PCOS. So the connection with occupational health, it also causes a huge economic burden for society. In the United States, it's estimated to cost 4.36 billion annually, covering healthcare costs only related to initial evaluation and treatment of menstrual dysfunction, infertility, diabetes, and hirsutism. So it also represents significant productivity loss for individuals, employers, and societies. And for healthcare practitioners, recognizing the relevance of PCOS in relation to working life outcomes is important. So methods, it's a cross-sectional case control study. It uses survey data from the NFBC 1966, which is the Northern Finland birth cohort study from 1966, which is in the title. That was a longitudinal study that began with all births in 1966 in the two northernmost provinces of Finland. So it included 12,058 live-born babies, and 5,889 of these were females. And so this cohort has been followed over over several decades, and it provides a rich data set for different health studies. So they identified women with and without PCOS at two key follow-up points, 31 and 46. In total, they had 280 women with PCOS and 1,573 without. And the survey also included a 2-year follow-up period after age 46, and it includes lifelong data regarding new disabilities. So what was in the survey, there was a workability index to obtain participants' perception about workability. They rated their current workability score on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 meaning lifetime best, and 8 to 10 being good, and 0 to 7 being poor. They were also asked to rate their physical and mental job demands on a Likert scale and ask the question, do your diagnosed diseases or injuries affect your ability to work? So analysis, there's 3 main things it's looking at. It's looking at the odds ratios, the incident rate ratios, and the hazard ratios. We used a binary logistic regression model for the odds ratios, Poisson regression for the incident rate ratios, and incidents in this case were classified as disability and unemployment dates. And then they used Kaplan-Meier to estimate the hazard ratios, and the hazard was the hazard of lifetime disability prevention in the study groups at age 52. Okay, so this is the odds ratio table. At the top, it has for workability, relation to physical demands, mental demands, disability at work because of distress, and self-prognosis of ability 2 years from now. With odds ratios, if it's over 1, it means it's a positive association. And with this table, if it's bolded, it means that they are statistically significant or under the p-value of 0.05. You can see a lot of bolded over one scores in relation to physical job demands and perceived disability at work because of diseases. Interestingly, the only ones that are under one or negative associations are in the poor ability in relation to mental job demands. Um, Even though the rate of increased mental distress is well established in PCOS, it was not noted as part of the study. This is the incident rate ratio table. All of these are over one, so they're all positive associations, but they weren't statistically significant, which is why they weren't bolded like the other one. And this is a graph with the hazard ratio. So the hazard ratio for women disability age retirement for 52, which is Finland's early disability and retirement, you can take out at 52 if you qualify. But it's almost doubled for women with PCOS versus women without PCOS. Results. So I put up the percentages and the p-values next to each thing if you're interested. But women with PCOS evaluated their health as poor more often, were more often obese, and more often on disability leave. When it came to self-ratings, they reported poor workability in general in terms of physical demands, but not in terms of mental demands, like I mentioned earlier. They often reported poor workability due to diseases and were likely expecting their health wouldn't allow working in their current profession in 2 years compared to the non-PCOS group. In the 2-year follow-up, the women with PCOS also had 32 days of disability and 31 additional days of employment compared to those without PCOS. Strengths and weaknesses of the study. It's not very generalizable. It was using the Northern Finland birth cohort, so all the members were Finnish, and they were also ethnically Finnish Caucasians, which PCOS is actually shown to more disproportionately affect women of color, so that would have been interesting to include. Finland's also a welfare state that provides education and healthcare to all its citizens, which is not necessarily true in other countries, so that would be evaluated differently as well. The 31 and 46 follow-up ages, like I said before, it affects women of all ages, so if they had more follow-up points, that would be less of a weakness as well. Their registers did not cover short sickness absences, so the absences from work were only fully documented if they were over 2 weeks. And only 2 criteria was used to identify PCOS members for the study, which are menstrual irregularity and excessive hair growth. And as I talked about before, there's a lot more symptoms and qualifiers for PCOS that could be counted. The strengths of the study, they used internationally validated survey questions related to workability. And they considered a wide range of potential confounders. As you saw in those data tables, they separate a lot of things out. And the register data on disability, retirement, unemployment avoids recall bias because they aren't just relying on the self-reporting of the women, they're also following it up with all the registers. Okay, so the conclusion is that they concluded that PCOS predicts poor participation in working life by increasing the risk of disability-based absences and unemployment of disability in middle age, and concerted effort should be made to support working careers for women with PCOS. Just a little note that I put is that adjusting associations for risky behaviors, things like alcohol consumption or BMI, did not dilute the association with PCOS. Poor workability, disability, and unemployment days, which shows that PCOS is most likely the cause for those, and that people and physicians should consider PCOS a red flag when detecting multimorbidity. Okay, so this is how I incorporated AI. I plugged the study into Microsoft Copilot and I asked it to generate some discussion questions. The questions here, primary objective, key findings, these to me were all more like reading comprehension questions than discussion questions. So I asked it for deeper discussion questions. These are a little bit better. They look at broader implications, early interventions, the role of socioeconomic factors. But I wanted it to be closer oriented for people studying occupational health. So I got these questions, and these were still fairly surface level, even though they were for an audience studying occupational health. So asked it again for deeper questions with occupational health, and then I got 20 questions, which is too many. So I asked it to pare down to the 5 most important questions, and these are what I got. So you want to ask about these questions or ask me other questions, yeah, go ahead. I also have Copilot answers to these questions if you're interested.
What do you think about some of these? What questions were
Um,
intriguing to you, or did you think was a good question?
hmm. I think the second question is good. To explain the higher incidence of disability and unemployment days among women with PCOS, even after adjusting for socioeconomic factors. I think this is mostly because of all the comorbidities associated with PCOS, the mental health issues, and physical issues that should also be considered as risk factors. Yeah. Hi.
That like the NIH and like other like US kind of agencies don't really focus on PCOS. But like, is it a bigger deal in like Finland? Is that why they were running the study?
Not specifically. They just had a lot of rich data from that Northern Finland birth cohort, so they used that.
What do you think the long-term applicability of the study like this is for particularly like a country like ours where we're not a welfare state, we don't have universal health care? I'm pretty sure PCOS probably wouldn't land you with long-term disability either.
Here.
And so I guess what are kind of like, what would you say is the usability of the study, then maybe some like future steps that we can like take from these findings to kind of better advocate for PCOS?
I think supporting more women with their different working life outcomes, um, things like time off and stuff like that. So there's less burnout among women with PCOS because of the related health issues would be a good way to solve that. But I think there needs to be research done in the US as well, or at least more of it.
Any idea what the prevalence rate is for polycystic ovarian?
It's 10%.
10%.
10% of women.
Yeah. So ChatGPT gave me the answer of 5 to 10%. Very vanilla. And then I put it in Google, and I immediately, for the same, for 1/10 the electrical charge, I got 8 to 13%. So that sounds a little bit more accurate. The interesting thing is ChatGPT gave me the answer on ethnicities. Pretty vanilla as well. But the Google gave me right away an NIH citation that talks about non-Hispanic Black women have an overall milder phenotype. So there's more depth of information, ironically, that came out of
Google.
yeah. What it's worth.
Yeah, I learned about the ethnicity from that NIH 2017 study.
Prevalence question is the impact of this is high. I mean, you're talking even 5% of the population of the workforce, you're talking a significant number that you'll run across the problem. It's quite significant, naturally. And so, and when you're talking about getting on disability, higher rates or whatever the number is. Those people die young. That could be on disability.
But
Oh, yeah. Hi.
my question, I guess, isn't study related, but it's out of curiosity. I guess I could just Google, but what causes PCOS? Where does it come from?
It is come from like a hormonal issue and imbalance, so it's part of the
Derived
genetic.
spontaneously hormonally?
I'm sort of interested in question 3. So, there's a study that says there's a major problem and causing, presumably big problems for employers and for everyone. So what can be done about it?
Just more support, more like interventions in like work-life balance and time off and things like that, I think would be helpful, but there needs to be more research done on that for sure.
Anything else? Going once? Going twice? All right.
Okay, cool. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And Baba, what is the advance and
That one right
oh,
there.
that advances?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you for being here. I'm presenting today, which is proof positive that there's no such thing as a free lunch. Okay, so you're all going to have to do this. But I picked this paper because it's timely. Both Rocky Mountain Center and the university have recognized ChatGPT and other large language models are out there. And we want to understand them, possibly leverage them, and possibly countermeasure against them, however appropriate. And there's more and more every day, as you know. Plus, the big thing is I couldn't resist the title because, let's face it, it's cool. When you see that title, you got to look it up. So I looked it up. But I think, what we're going to do today is just maybe get a better understanding of what ChatGPT is and have fun. Okay, we're going to have fun with this. How can you not? So, Philip Koopman is a electrical engineering professor at Carnegie Mellon, and he's been writing quite a bit about automatic car or self-driving cars, automated driving systems, and this is a column that he puts up. But large language models, which is what ChatGPT runs on, as a bullshit machine. So he said, large language models don't lie. They are simply indifferent to the truth, which is a good point. And that's something we'll walk away from here today, I hope. So they're not lying necessarily, but they just don't care. And this is the bullshit Bible I actually had a couple copies of this before I saw the paper, but it was Harry Frankfurt, a philosophy professor at Princeton. The book says it was published in 2005, but apparently it came out in a journal or something as an essay. So anyway, I hope we have fun with this. And you can pick this up pretty easily on Amazon. It's a small book. It's not as voluminous as the real Bible, but um, so anyway, ChatGPT, who has used one of them? Has anyone not? A little bit, yeah, okay. How have you used it? Entertainment, academics, work? Academics. How have you used it?
Help me write code.
Okay. Is that cheating?
It would be if I didn't write the code myself.
Oh, okay.
I'd use it for hints.
I'm kidding, by the way. Yeah, who else has used it? Yes, what have you done?
It's a not very reliable copy editor, but like sometimes if you're like, this sentence isn't working, what would you change?
Oh, okay.
Like know what you're doing and don't trust it 100%.
Okay.
It can help
You
some.
can get new ideas. Kurt, did you have something?
Yeah, I've used it in several different ways. Some things have been helpful, like brainstorming to get a list of ideas.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty good.
It's
That's a helpful thing that'll accelerate your generation, but I wouldn't look at it first. I would start with your own. But I don't know if you want entertainment. I just stuck in there. So why did Harris lose the election? It says, this is my last knowledge. He's not lost an election.
I've you've toyed with it. I've tried to get into arguments with ChatGPT, and it's amazing. I've really been surprised. I asked it about, what's the best crime to commit if you want to get away with it, and it says, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. That's unethical. And, but then I asked them about right and wrong, and it says, I don't do ethics, you know? So then I got in some long conversation. I was baiting it, and I made up some provocative propositions, and eventually it spit back everything I said. Well, you said this, you did that, like an angry significant other. I was really surprised. It spit that back out like, don't blame me, it's your problem. Look at what you did. But anyway, let's have some fun today. What do you see about the picture? Yeah, it's a left hand on a right arm. So I've been generating a lot of pictures with this. This is a cheap and easy way to fill a lecture slide. And with the 16:9, you really have a lot of space to work with. So I've been using that. And it's really surprising what you get. Sometimes it won't, I wanted to show a fist fight between people, and it generated it. Normally it says, we don't do violence, we don't do other things. So rewording it, well, I didn't have to reword it, I was anticipating it, but other times it said, I won't generate this picture for you. Okay. This is a self-portrait of ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is bullshit. That's admittedly a provocative title. How many of you think it's intentional? Okay. What would be the advantage of making a provocative title in academia?
I read it.
What's that?
I read it.
You read it? Yeah. What else? Impact factor. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of citations, aren't you, Bubba?
Right now, there's, hundreds, if not, probably hundreds of articles about ChatGPT. So how do you stand out amid this?
Yeah, this stands out from all these, the blah, 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 blah. ChatGPT is bullshit, is really right there. So it is tantalizing. Is it effective? Well, we're talking about it here today, so I guess it is. Meaningful? I don't know, we'll see. But it's a semi-serious paper on a serious topic. And if you didn't know, OpenAI makes ChatGPT, which is only one of many large language models. And certainly we cannot get into much detail here, just scratch the surface and have some fun. So do you want to know what you look like according to ChatGPT? I described you and generated a picture. This is what you look like. So do you feel like you're looking into a mirror? So what's wrong here? Yeah, sitting backwards. And
Doctors. Is that what's happening?
The chairs are backwards.
yeah, the chairs are backwards. Look, what about the windows on the ceiling? I mean, well, it could be skylights, but and everyone's in a white lab coat. When you start generating these images, you find out that everyone is young and attractive, you know? And you have to tell them, make some of these people older. I had to generate photos of a business meeting, right? Showed a man and a woman. It looked like they were flirting, and maybe it were, it depends on the business. But so anyway, I think a lot of you know what to expect. But okay, so we're going to analyze the title. Chat GPT is bullshit. So we have a subject, a verb, and an object. Okay, we know what Chat GPT is, right? And we have our object, bullshit, okay? And we're not going to worry about what the meaning of the word is. People of a certain age will understand that. So we're going to look at the subject and the object. So ChatGPT, what is it? And then what is bullshit? Technical definition. Okay. So ChatGPT is chat plus GPT. Chat's approximately equal to chat box. So we're working mathematics in here, okay? So it's a computer program designed to simulate conversation. So that's a chat bot. And I think, how many of you have talked with them and customer service somewhere? I mean, they're popping up all over the place. Yeah. And sometimes they're preferable to people. I mean, I hate to say that, but so GPT is a generative pre-trained transformer, hence the transformer over here. So it generates stuff. It can generate images and analyses, and it also makes stuff up or hallucinates. It's pre-trained. It's trained to follow a prompt and give a human type response. And essentially, these language models are fed the internet. They just go out there and devour everything, which is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is lots of data good?
I mean, it's definitely,
Always? What's that?
it's definitely not good if you're the owner of some of that data.
Yeah, I mean, everyone who owns IP is, and these pictures, the legitimacy of those is somewhat questionable. It's in a gray area now because, and I have IP, and each of us is going to have probably some point. So we're all being stolen from. But is the internet a wealth of great high integrity data? Probably not. So, and transformer, it sort of comprehends everything at once, not like some of the earlier ones that were sequential. But GPT really cannot understand anything. It's a large um, um, database with links that we'll look at here. So the details of the language model are proprietary because there's a lot of money at stake. And they want to replicate human speech and writing, massive statistical models, probability-based word relationships. Here, they'll link how often lorem is next to ipsum, which is one word away from dignus, and all sorts of combinations. And they come up with billions of tokens that sort of describe relationships, and it works off of that. And I'm sure some of you know a lot more about that than I do, but I'm not going to dive any deeper. But it's one form of artificial intelligence. and machine learning. So large language model, we sort of alluded to this, garbage in, garbage out. It has trouble with, multi-stage thinking. So if you have a small error, become a larger error, larger and larger. So it doesn't really correct. And it's not really intended to represent the real world. But the goal is to provide a normal seeming response to a prompt, not to convey helpful or truthful information. So humans and ChatGPT do have different goals. ChatGPT just wants to give you a human-like response, whereas in this room, we're probably looking, when we're using it for research work, we're looking for more factual stuff. Okay, we took care of subject, I'm sorry. Now we're going to go to bullshit. So bullshit is not equal to bull plus shit, keeping with mathematics there. It's a noun and a verb, so we're doing grammar. And don't try this at home, but here are two definitions from Merriam-Webster. One is to talk nonsense, to talk nonsense, especially with the intention of deceiving or misleading. So it's sort of a lie with an intent to deceive. Whereas Frankfurt says it's a reckless disregard for the truth. So that's what he says here. And it requires no conviction from the speaker. And there are three types of bullshit, according to the paper. General bullshit, which is anything you're saying where the speaker is indifferent to the truth. So uncertain motives, of a speaker. But then you have soft bullshit, which is that produced without the intention to mislead an audience. We all know people that talk a lot, right? Just like to talk about everything, and you don't believe them, but they don't expect you to believe them either. They just like talking. And that's sort of benign, indifference without conviction, lack of concern, but they're not trying to fool you. And then there's the hard version, produced with the intention of deceiving you. So attempt to deceive or misrepresent the speaker's motives. I think since Tuesday, a lot of that has dropped off, but that's my hope anyway. And indifference to truth is extremely dangerous, and we'll continue that on the next slide. There we go. Lies, hallucinations, and bullshit. Indifference to the truth is dangerous by the mindlessly frivolous attitude that accepts the proliferation of bullshit as innocuous and indispensable human treasure is squandered. And that's from the book. But irrespective of whether or not ChatGPT is hard or soft, it does produce BS. And chat is not bullshit, but it does output that. So it's portraying itself as a person, but it's really a model, so it's not a person. And if you use the term hallucination for mistakes, then you're sort of personifying it. It does not perceive things that we missed, because if you look at a picture, if I took a picture of all of you and went back to my office and looked at it, I'd pick up a lot of things I missed. But that's different than generating stuff that's not there. So it makes stuff up because it sounds about right. And if Joe Allen was here, he could maybe explain confabulation, which the psychologists believe is a better word. So hallucination sort of gives GPT a human body, and that is unwarranted. So some things that ChatGPT says will be true, others will be false. And is the output right or wrong? Well, the same process, the same model, the same relationships generate both answers. So probabilistic model leads to wrong answers, and a probabilistic model also leads to correct answers. So ChatGPT finds the truth by accident. So calling mistakes hallucinations is not harmless. It's not trying to convey information. It is bullshitting. And do any of you understand that? Okay, this is Hal from 2001. We're still quite a few years, maybe, away from that. But a lot of students I've had have never seen the movie 2001. How many of you have watched the movie? How many of you have understood the movie? It takes some effort. The movie was made, then they finished the book. So the book explains some things not in the movie, but it does take some dedication to get to it. But I noticed that Siri has lost her sense of humor. You used to be able to say, "Hey Siri, open the pod bay doors," and it would say, "I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that." But now when you ask Siri, it says, "I don't have an app for opening the pod bay doors." So there's no humor left in that. And those of you who's used MATLAB, does it still give smart aleck answers? Because back in the day, when I was in grad school, you could use MATLAB and you would type in why, and it would say, because Bob told me, but ultimately it would say RTFM, which means read the fine manual. And you could type in all sorts of answers like that, and the programming humor was still there, but they've taken that out too. But anyway, I encourage everyone to watch the movie and maybe dig into it a little bit because
Does.
what's that?
You asked MATLAB why. I have the app on my phone and it said the bald and not excessively bald and not excessively smart hamster obeyed a terrified and not excessively terrified hamster.
Really?
Yeah.
Try it again
Okay.
because
To fool the tall, good, and smart system manager.
okay, so it still has
Something in here.
there is something in there. Okay, but it used to say RTFM.
That's funny.
Yeah. So anyway, I encourage you to watch 2001 because with all this AI, you're hearing about HAL and all that stuff, and it would be good for you to understand it. Plus, the cinematography is outstanding, the props, everything. I don't like sci-fi, but I love this movie, and I'll get off my soapbox in a minute. But Stanley Kubrick did a phenomenal job, and all the techie nerds in here will appreciate that when you see the wireframe models of the spaceship landing, which would be like 80s technology, every one of those cells was hand painted, superimposed. So they were superimposing for each frame separately in post processing, and just some incredible technology. But anyway, moving on. So you've all heard of lies, damn lies, and statistics, and it's attributed to Mark Twain, but he attributes Benjamin Disraeli, a former Prime Minister of England in 1880 or so. But anyway, I wanted to just open the floor to discussions. Oh, and one more thing. This is a book by Salman Khan from Khan Academy. It's called Brave New Words: How AI Will Revolutionize Education and Why That's a Good Thing. And among the things he says is that as educators, we should embrace it. And as a result, we should ask more out of students. So what have been your experiences with AI? Has anyone ever heard of expert systems? Okay, that's a deductive form of when I was in grad school back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. Um, AI was solving a lot of problems, in particular medical diagnosis. So they would have an expert, a doctor, answer questions about did they have a fever? You know, is their bone sticking out? What's their blood? And they would go through and diagnose using an expert, but that was rule based. So if then else stuff. And that's fallen out of favor. And everyone's doing big data, but there's so much garbage in there. And I've been thinking about creating an expert system for safety, product safety, and no one makes that software anymore, really. Everyone's gone to large language models, which is inductive reasoning, basically, or probability-based rather than rule-based. So with rule-based, you will get a correct answer, providing all your rules are correct, but statistically, you may not. But it seems sad to me that that part of AI has been neglected. So, your experiences, what do you think? What have you done that was interesting? Yes.
I think if you look at a chess data, about 20 to 25 moves before you start entering unknown territory. And the reason I think that is because ChatGPT stops being able to play chess
Oh, really?
at about right after that has no idea what to give you.
Okay. Good. How does GTP stack up against some of the other ones? I've really only spent much time on that. How are some of the other ones compared to it?
But like Claude is a lot better at writing.
Which one?
Claude.
Claude?
I forget which outfit puts that one out, but that one tends to just have better writing quality than ChatGPT. ChatGPT was trained on everything, but then the creators tell it whether it did a good job or not. And the people who kind of made that assessment for ChatGPT privileged completeness over brevity. And that's why you get kind of the giant unwieldy.
Yeah. I took the New York Times article that I was in, being egomaniacal for a moment. I fed that into ChatGPT and I said, turn it into a Cold War spy novel. And it generated all this stuff. Then I said, type in insert a femme fatale, because every spy novel needs this shadowy woman, right? So they put her in, gave her a name. And then I said, generate some pictures, and it showed Berlin, you know, in the dark, in the mist with the spotlights. And it's really good for that type of stuff because I was really impressed. But I fed it my book. I created a separate GPT, I'm sorry, and fed all the chapters of my book in and started using it like an expert system. And about half the stuff it was getting right and half it was just making up. So that's where something like an expert system would be better. But other thoughts, what are your experiences? Yes.
I've had, sort of piggybacking on what Kevin said, was that if I try to use ChatGPT to write or edit, and I just say, write this thing or edit this thing, it does not do a very good job. It's very vanilla, very vague, like high school level stuff. But the more specific I am with the prompt and like assigning it a role, say, I'll even say like you're a copy editor at a and try to and be really specific with what I want out of it. I want tone to be this. I want the reader to get sort of this information. It does better. It's definitely not like
one good thing when you start generating photos with or pictures, like here, you realize how much you take for granted. You're not just looking for this. You're looking for this, 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 and this. You've just presumed that it knew. So as you start getting more precise, you know, I mean, here's a hallucination here. There's a propeller that's not hooked up to anything, and these are perpendicular to the flow, which would be air brakes rather than control surfaces. And I don't know about the horses, if there were horses at Kitty Hawk. I don't know. Were there? Oh, okay. Yes.
Speaking of the images, what do you think about the ethics of them? Because we know now, I think it was Midjourney was like scraping Getty Images for their images to
Yeah.
create them. So they had the little logo in the corner,
Okay.
which is
I-
not legal.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you think are like, the ethics about generating images?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. And right now, I'm sort of taking advantage of the grayness. But at the same time, I know that my work, as limited as that is being scraped too. So it's inevitable, but that doesn't make it right. You know, it's inevitable that people are going to kill people, but that doesn't make it right. So it's a great question. And I would not put an image like that in a book, for example, because that would be sketchy. But in a presentation to you know, there's fair use for educational purposes. So I guess I really don't have to answer the question. I'm a bit of a coward. It's sort of a cop-out answer, but you raise a really good question, and it's going to have to be.
See like children's books with AI generated images and people are now selling it in like stores. And
Yeah, I think you shouldn't be doing that. I don't think. I don't think so. So what else? What other things come to mind? I mean, we just want a full discussion here. What are your experiences? What has a not? Yes, Margaret.
I think that's interesting when we think about the safety behind large language models. Often, like, we can ask it something maybe like vulgar and appropriate, and it's like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's actually, so when ChatGPT was or OpenAI was creating ChatGPT, they actually outsourced all of the scraping of like super horrible content of the internet overseas.
Oh, I heard that. I heard about that. They were getting paid 50 cents an hour or something.
Yeah, so I think that's an important like caveat. Is that
Yeah.
it's not really a reflection of the internet, it's a reflection of a very small portion of the internet.
Yeah.
And that's
There are a lot of ethical things going on behind the scenes, as well as the front end, which we've talked about. But that's a great point. And
creating a system which is, to OpenAI's credit, it's creating like mostly not racist and like mostly wants to leave horrible things,
well,
mostly not misogynistic.
yeah.
So that's because that stuff did have to really be scraped.
Yeah.
The internet and the info that was fed into it.
Yeah, I wanted once to generate a positive image from a negative stereotype, and it wouldn't let me do that. You know, I understood it was sensitive, but I was wanted to show that it exists, to highlight that, and it wouldn't let me. Let me ask you this. The Consumer Product Safety Commission, who regulates just about everything in your home, toasters and TVs, not industrial products, not cars. They're into big data right now, and they want everyone to do data analytics. And I'll pick on Amazon because they have billions of data points. And of course, Amazon is fighting, but I really question whether there is much useful information there. What do you feel? Because people are going to complain, they're going to exaggerate. Some of them want. I've been in an industry where buyers have had buyer's remorse after a couple months and want to make up something because they want it bought back. But what would happen if policy is based on the data analytics of Amazon, do you think?
Well, we know that, for instance, like Amazon reviews are booked, like they're.
Oh, say it ain't so.
Yeah, these chatbots are probably churning out
Yeah.
positive reviews on everything. So like, the question of the garbage that's
Yeah.
going into these things is a big concern.
So if you don't like something, let's say your watch, let's say it sort of scratches you a little bit, it has a sharp corner on it. If you just say, well, it bothers me, they're probably not going to do anything. So what do you have to do to maybe get them to buy it back?
I have this creeping rash.
Yeah, I have this rash, everything. So So there are going to be biases in that data to extremes. And I know that when I was involved in looking at customer data, they would say black, black, black. You go out there, look at it, and it's white, just completely different. So self-reporting has a lot of problems. And let's say there's a toaster that's burning down homes, okay, that has a fire, but it's one model, there's one event, and 1,000 newspapers report on it and report follow-up and report follow-up. So there's a lot of things that can happen with the data. What else could happen? I mean, what are your feelings on this? Yes.
I think it's kind of interesting that where that data actually goes to is a bit of a black box.
Yeah.
Like, we know that there's companies who sell your data
Mm-hmm.
so that they can build like a consumer profile around it.
Sure.
Like, I know Facebook was doing it for people who weren't on Facebook, I was like, can you please chill?
Yeah.
But I think just like the whole idea of like everything you put on the internet isn't gonna leave.
Yeah.
It's very much true now with like the amount of data they collect.
Yeah. I did all my dumb stuff for social media. Yeah, it's a win. Yeah. So, but that's another reason I tell all my students, if you, in your professional lives, just make sure you do the right thing because they can dig up anything years, decades later even. So anyway, yes.
On that point, it's also, I think, important to think about like piles of data are also market barriers. Over the last few decades, you see all these tech companies who buy a company and then immediately dissolve that company and fire everyone and all of that, discontinue their products. That happened with Fitbit and a bunch of other companies. And the reason they're doing that is because, well, Fitbit had a big pile of data.
Yeah.
And if Google buys that, they then have that data, which lets them produce a better smartwatch.
Yep.
Right. So, and I mean, this happens in like advertising and retail as well. So it's just like, if you've got that big pile of data, a startup without that big pile of data can't really effectively compete with you. So that creates a lot of.
And another thing is that Europe is getting very strict about data protection. Now, they'll have all these laws, but whether companies follow them, who knows? It's hard to know what a company is. They have an office here, but headquarters here, and who knows what happens to all that data. It's a good goal. I don't know if they'll achieve it. So, yes.
I think the point about advertising is also really interesting because that's like fundamentally reshaping the internet because everyone wants to be super clean for advertisers, which is part of why ChatGPT won't do a lot of stuff. Because it's like, we got to be a nice, wholesome company.
How many times have you Googled something and then the next week you see ads for the product?
War against ad blockers is actually really interesting because like they don't work on Google Chrome anymore. So
Oh, really?
yeah, like I really like ad block. I don't like seeing ads.
Yeah.
So I don't use Chrome anymore because it wouldn't let me use ad block on YouTube.
Okay.
On YouTube, and they were really mad about that. So they started stacking more ads on YouTube videos for people who weren't using ad blockers, so they could still make the same ad revenue.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting.
And YouTube keeps asking you for more money to block ads. And I've already gone to Plus or whatever. And then for another $2.95, they can block more ads. Well, for what I'm paying them, they can block all of them already. Yeah. So anyway, well, thank you. You guys have been wonderful. I've enjoyed doing this. I hope we had fun on a Friday afternoon. But everyone have a good weekend. And I think we're done here.
Let me share one more comment
Yes.
from Jeffrey King online.
Yeah.
He told ChatGPT that it was an expert career counselor and detailed his background and asked what career is in high demand and asked it to give him the top 5 careers that fit his background. The number 1 recommendation was to be an occupational and environmental safety and health expert. So,
well, it's right there, right? Okay, thank you.
No Journal Club next week. Aramco has an advisory board meeting this time next week. So we'll see you again in 2 weeks.